Victor Boone will join us who is our 2014 winner in recognizing Duncan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Before we proceed with giving the award, presenting the award to Duncan, there are numerous McMillan family members and friends who are present for this occasion. I should have figured that when I drove up at about 5 after 12 and saw so many parking spaces filled. And the first person that I want to recognize is Duncan's wife, Cornelia. If you will stand when I call your name, please. And his children, Campbell and Evan. And of course, Robert McMillan, Duncan's father. Duncan's niece, Carrie McMillan, and her husband, David Boaz. And I hope I didn't mess that last name up. As well as Duncan's siblings, Doug, Lewis, and Beth McMillan. May have gotten that wrong. At least I better stop here because I'm not certain. A little bit unclear on here, but you all know who you are. There's some other names that are listed here, and it's not, and they're either siblings or spouses of siblings. And there's Lewis and Beth McMillan, May McMillan Benson, and her husband Griffin Riley Benson. Okay. And there are some other folks that we want to recognize, including Stephen Smith, a prior recipient himself, Duncan's longtime friend and law partner. Cameron Lee of the law firm. Allison, I believe this is Dahl, D-A-H-L-E, and Joanna Salcedo of the law firm. David and Jennifer Venable and Shauna Vasilico. Present also are the following friends: Duncan's lifelong friend, Ray Goodman, and his wife, Susan. Jim Jenkins, lifelong friend and relative. Martha Walston, former firm associate. She's right over there. Catherine Jean, former firm associate. Mark Perry, friend and frequent co-counsel. William Plyler, lifelong friend and longtime partner with his wife, Sally. Wayne Watkins, a sunburnt boy. That's what it says. I didn't make this up. Dak Cannon of the Silver Dollar Gang. You all will have to ask for explanations of these. Jim Branch, son of Chief Justice Joseph Branch, in whose memory this honor is dedicated. And finally, Steve Peterson, longtime friend, and his wife, Michelle. Now, there are two speakers who will come forward, George Currin and Judge Vince Rozier, who will speak about Duncan. And the first one on the list is George Currin, so if you will step forward.
Wow, this is an amazing turnout, but not surprising at all, given who's receiving this award today. I met Duncan McMillan almost 30 years ago in one of the smoking rooms of the Wake County Courthouse. Some of the best people come out of the smoking rooms, if you didn't know that. And he's been my friend and mentor ever since. The greatest honor I think I've received in my life, perhaps, is Duncan McMillan asking me to speak on his behalf today. I feel like I'm opening up for Mick Jagger because he really is a rock star, and you all know that. I called Whitney Von Hom, I think I'm pronouncing that right, of the Wake County Bar last week just to find out what I needed to do, what the schedule was for speaking today. And she said, well, just say a few things about Duncan, talk for about 5 or 7 minutes. And I said, well, that's funny because Duncan said talk for about 2 minutes. And, but that's Duncan for you. He's modest, he's humble, he's not seeking the spotlight or the limelight. He's always trying to help you out rather than getting something for himself. I could tell you today that Duncan McMillan is my best friend, and that would be true. But you know that there are dozens, if not hundreds, of people who call Duncan McMillan their best friend. And that's because he has done so much for so many that in their minds, he is their best friend. And I'm one of those people. Duncan has the unique ability to navigate effortlessly among people of all walks of life, whether it's the honky-tonk bar, the Supreme Court of North Carolina, the country club, or the Wake County Jail. Duncan is loved by everyone who comes to know him. He is truly Wake County's own Atticus Finch, and I think he's followed in his father's footsteps in that regard. I've observed Duncan befriend and mentor countless young lawyers and many young prosecutors as well, which is a wonderful thing to see. And I've had the privilege in my career of working with some of the very best lawyers in the state and anywhere for that matter, but no one has had such a profound and positive effect on me as Duncan McMillan. And by the way, he's the best trial lawyer I've ever seen. And he's been in the trenches for over 40 years fighting for his clients and defending them. And if you hadn't heard, practicing law is hard and it's stressful sometimes. But Duncan always does it with grace and integrity and compassion for everyone involved in the process. I just want to read one quick thing here. The Wake County Bar Professionalism Creed. I want to read part of it, not the whole thing. But it says, my word is my bond. Integrity is an absolute. Fairness and civility are essential. Financial considerations will never override my professional responsibility. To my clients, I offer loyalty, competence, diligence, and good judgment. To my colleagues in the practice of law, I offer concern for your welfare. To the courts and those who assist them, I offer respect, candor, and courtesy. And to opposing parties and their counsel, I offer honesty, fairness, and courtesy. Well, you all know that Duncan McMillan embodies that professionalism creed in every single way. I know Duncan's received many awards in his life, and he's deserving of all of them. But to me, this award is the highest honor that any of us can receive in our profession. To me, receiving this award is like receiving the Olympic gold medal in the decathlon, because it means so much about so many different things that we do as lawyers. And no one is more deserving of this award than Duncan McMillan. And I know I speak for everyone here in this room, all these many people who showed up today, for you, Duncan, when I say we love you and we thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Yeah, we're still in North Carolina. You can respond back. It's good to see you all today and see you in person instead of sending you an email. But it is indeed an honor to be here for Duncan. Much of what I would have to say would probably support what George has already pointed out, but there's just a little different perspective from being a former prosecutor and then a judge and having Duncan appear before you. And I would just point out that in history, if you go back and you can be in the 20th century, the 21st century, you can think of a few classics or icons that you just knew by their first or their last name. Elvis and Sinatra, Jordan and Tyson, Beyonce and Adele. Well, with apologies to the Wake Forest graduates here today, in the Wake County Courthouse, there is the one and only one Duncan. And let it be known, this is probably the last time that you will hear Duncan be compared to Beyonce. Now, before preparing today, I did ask some of his lunchtime colleagues if there was a good story that they felt could be shared today, and I was told that there are stories, but it might not be appropriate for today. And so I'll go back on my own personal history. I can tell you that about 16 or 17 years ago, whenever I was first an intern or an assistant DA in the Wake County Courthouse, and it was time for a trial to begin, I was fetched to go and find the attorney for that trial. It was probably by Judge Fullwood or someone, and I was told, or I was directed to go between courtroom 2A and courtroom 2D to the smoke room. And I went there, and yes, I found Duncan and I found Mark Perry. Now, I point this out not necessarily to roast Duncan, but also to point out to the new attorneys that, yes, there indeed was the smoke room, and also Duncan was where he said he was going to be. That's something new. But it was in that room that I met and came across someone with whom I had the opportunity to prosecute and argue against with a number of cases as a prosecutor and then as a judge, to have him appear before me countless times. And throughout it all, he's exhibited the same thing that Judge Currin, whenever I asked him his thoughts about Duncan, and that's consistency. You see, whenever I was in law school, you were taught not to lose your career over one particular client or one case. And Duncan has seemed to be the master of balancing and managing the expectations of a large number of his clients while still vigorously representing them. Whenever I was a prosecutor, somehow Duncan could find a way to prevent you from embarrassing yourself because you didn't have your ducks in a row, but still be able to zealously represent his client and all along still point out the weaknesses in your case. And there was nothing more disturbing than thinking that you had a great examination of your witness, believing that you've laid out the perfect case in chief, and then have the judge ask if there was anything on cross-examination, and Duncan just say in a loud, boisterous voice, "No questions, Your Honor." Because it was at that point that you knew that Duncan had you. And as a judge over the past 10 years, I can only say that I've continued to see Duncan observe the same professional courtesy to opposing counsel and to everyone. He's exhibited laser-sharp attention to the issue that he originally said he would challenge, unless there was something else that just popped up during the course of the trial or hearing. And I've observed Duncan continue to offer respect to witnesses until they themselves appear not to hold themselves to the same standard. But the thing that has stood out the most to me is something that Judge Salisbury pointed out about Duncan whenever I first became a judge. She pointed out, and I've observed it, that no matter the case or how the case ends, like a performer who takes a bow at the end of their performance, Duncan does not protest, he does not fret, and he doesn't celebrate. He just says, "Thank you, Your Honor." And so, motion granted. Thank you, Your Honor. Motion denied. Thank you, Your Honor. Guilty or not guilty. Thank you, Your Honor. And I remember whenever I first begun as a judge, and I gave one of his clients a sentence that, upon later reflection, I realized was probably a little too harsh, just a little bit. I went back and actually mentioned to Duncan, I don't know exactly why I gave him that harsher sentence. And Duncan said, "Well, I don't know why you did that either, Your Honor, but that was it." But at the same time, whenever we had the sentencing arguments at the end of that too harsh of a sentence, Duncan said, "Thank you, Your Honor." And so whenever I became a judge, I can tell you that I was told to identify someone who has the temperament that you would like to display as a judge. I chose Judge Rader and Judge Currin, and I probably failed horribly. But whenever I give CLEs and I talk about professionalism, and I try to point out someone that younger or newer attorneys should model themselves after, I regularly point out Duncan McMillan. And finally, I would like to offer this last point. For some parents, at some point in time, they become known as their child's parent. They become known as Johnny's dad or Susie's mom, whoever Johnny and Susie are. And for many parents, this is seen as an honor because it is a reflection on the good job of parenting that has been done in the same holds true here today. And so it was some time before I became aware of the pillar that Mr. Robert McMillan has been for the legal profession in Wake County. And there is no doubt that Duncan's professionalism, for which we honor, or that we honor today, has greatly been influenced by his father. But there is no doubt, Duncan, that a rose by any other last name would smell just as sweet. And so, now that I've compared Duncan to Beyonce and to a rose, I think it's time for me to move on and just say, congratulations, Duncan. You deserve it.
Before the presentation is made to Duncan, I just want to mention an observation that I made before coming over here. I know that Duncan, and knew then that Duncan had been practicing and has been practicing for a long time, but I didn't know exactly for how long. So I looked at an old directory from 1975, and I didn't find his name, and that was because he was licensed and had graduated from law school 2 years later. But I looked at some of those old photos in there, including mine, and a few other folks in this audience, and I saw Fred Morlock's photo in there, and he had this long mane of golden hair. and I looked at John McClain, and John had hair, and I looked at mine, and I had this moderate afro, and so I decided to try to find one for Duncan, and finally I did find one from 2000, and Duncan had all of his hair, and I got jealous because you can see what I have now, and if you look at Fred down there, you see what he's got. So I thought, well, I don't know if I'm going to give Duncan this award or not. I might just walk out of here with this thing because I'm jealous. But all kidding aside, I would like to make this presentation right now to Duncan. So Duncan, if you will come forward.
As I understand it, the rules suggest that I could speak or not. I'll speak, but just briefly. But I can't thank George and Vince, Judge Rozier, enough. Those are mighty humbling remarks, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate everything that this award means. I feel so undeserving of it, but I do greatly appreciate it. But if I've told George Currin once, I've told him 1 billion times not to exaggerate. I've only been practicing law 39 years, George. And I'm pleased that at least I saw 3 of my law school classmates here. There may be some more that I didn't see, but David Kirby and Chip Gibbons and Johnny Edwards and I went through law school together, and I'm proud to have them here. They're mighty kind to be present. And I'm going to tell the standard Joseph Branch anecdote for the benefit of the young lawyers here, particularly Cameron Lee, who's my associate. He's been with me and Steve for about 2 years now. But in 1938, when Joe Branch finished Wake Forest Law School, he went back to Enfield to practice law with an older lawyer named Mac Johnson. And after a few years, perhaps interrupted by his 2 years of military service during World War II, Judge Branch's practice began to thrive, and Mac Johnson's practice began to decline. And one afternoon, Mac Johnson was in the office. Branch was over at the courthouse working on some matter. And an old client of Mac Johnson's came in, and he said, "Hey, Ralph, can I help you?" He said, No, Mr. Johnson, I'm waiting on Mr. Branch." He said, "All right, he's at the courthouse. He'll be back after a while." After about 20 minutes, he walked back out and said, "Ralph, can I help you? I mean, Mr. Branch must be busy." No, I'm waiting to see Mr. Branch." And Mac was sitting there in his office and said, "Damn, I've been practicing law for 40 years. I've been representing this man for 35 years, and he's now looking for Mr. Branch. This is pissing me off." So he walked back out there and said, "Confound it, Ralph. Anything Mr. Branch can do, I can do. Now, what is it you want?" And he said, will you let me have $5 till payday? So, Cameron, that's what you got to look forward to, I'm afraid. And I will say this, I'm going to wrap it up, be short about it. But George's comments remind me of the comment somebody made about a dodo. Said a dodo never had a chance. It seems that his sole purpose for having been invented was so that he could go extinct. Said, and that was the only thing he could do. That's sort of what I feel like now, except if the presentation of this award to me means anything, I think it means that you can take time to help others, to boost them up a little bit, so that when you go extinct, there will in fact be somebody else, another dodo coming along. Thank you all very much.
Duncan, on behalf of all of us with the Wake County Bar Association, congratulations. You are an inspiration to all of us.